Hey shy people, what is your worst experience? Okay everyone, before we begin, why don't we go around the room and tell us a little about yourselves. My husband got me to go to a party with him at our friend's house. Got there, friend hugged me hello, and then said wow you smell really good, and then I swear to god everyone got up and went I want to smell, and I was surrounded by people sniffing me seconds after walking into a party. I wanted to die. It wasn't even perfume or anything, it was my hair oil. If I could afford therapy this would definitely come up. Sat at the back of the class in Spanish, when the teacher from the front asks a question. Being the little nerd I was in school, my hand shot up. The teacher then looked over, pointed directly at me and said "Sí, señorita." I was a very feminine, underdeveloped and late through puberty 15-year-old boy with longer than usual hair. I stopped answering any teacher's questions willingly from that point. I wouldn't say this is my worst experience, but it's amusing to me. I was setting up a network in a small satellite office and was still working when the last other person left. It was nighttime and they didn't see me or know I was still there, so they turned out all the office lights as they left. I left them off because I enjoy working in the dark and do it often. After like an hour another worker came back into the office to do something or another, and rather than have to say hi I opted to hide under the desk I was at in an open office as a 35-year-old man. I'm not sure why I did that, but luckily they didn't notice me and left again after about 15 minutes. NGL. Had to chuckle at this. Sounds like something I would do rather than explaining to the person that I enjoy working in the dark and seeming kinda weird. Had a high school buddy who was sworn to silence to most people, even teachers, yet a select few kids he talked to. Funniest guy I've ever met. Said he's gone full years without saying a word to his own teachers. We had this kid in my high school too. I had him in a lot of my classes, and no teacher was ever able to get a single word out of him the entire 4 years, including an extremely persistent Cubano Spanish teacher who made it a life's goal to get this kid to speak. One day in senior year, one of our teachers with a dark sense of humor is dicking around and poses a dead baby joke to class. How many dead babies does it take to fill up a bathtub? The silent kid, whom none of us had ever heard utter a damn word for nearly 4 years, answers without pause. 7. We all effing died. Putting a year's worth of confidence into a job interview, just to be the quiet one after you get the job. The anxiety, dude. It's always frustrating as hell. Your first few weeks while getting comfortable with everyone, you just keep asking yourself, if I could interview so well, why the hell is it taking so long to be able to talk with my coworkers? While going to college I interned for the state's largest business development corporation. In a meeting with C-suite executives, the top dog was just making friendly conversation before we got started and asked me what classes I was taking. To set the picture, I am just the pew note taker and would never expect anyone to even notice that I was there, let alone put me on the spot with a long table of successful professionals staring at me. I blacked out. Zero brain function. I mumbled a few inaudible grunts and ums before having no choice but to admit that I couldn't remember. Oh my dog. I wanted to die. The looks of confusion and the awkward century that it took to switch topics amongst themselves still haunts me before bed. That is profound. Went to a party. Guy I've never met walks up to me, shakes my hand, and says hello. What's your name? Where were you born? Where will you die? What's in between? Not letting go of my hand the whole time. I completely locked up. Had no idea what to say. Okay. My name's John. I was born in Milwaukee. Judging by this conversation I'm probably going to die at this party, and the in-between will be you murdering me. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, John. To be fair, that guy sounds a bit much. I think with a lot of these out there lines, timing is everything. That's either a fun party opener or a really off-putting one. Or maybe it's coke. That would also explain that type of line. I was in elementary and took a bus home each day. I missed my stop and I was so terribly shy and quiet the bus driver didn't hear me. He went on to pick up high school students and didn't notice I was still on the bus. The high school students were so sweet and kind. They alerted the bus driver and he took me home. My mom was freaking out by the time I got home. Happened to me too. Effing wackiest shy ever experienced. I expected these older kids to be dicks. Then they are the nicest folks ever. Yeah, and much later in life looking back, kids in middle school are pretty much the worst group of beings alive. They don't exactly mean to be, and not all of them are, but it's so common for these 12-13-year-olds to be right in that spot where they don't quite effing understand how horrible they actually are being, and people just brush it off as them being kids. In elementary school, everyone's loud and screaming and running around, just doing their best to notch themselves. Middle school is that I'm a effing sociopath for a few years while I learn what the hell empathy is. And then you hit high school where you get the typical teen rebellious phase, learning who they want to be, which I am sure is a nightmare for parents. But when I was in high school, some kids were just a-holes who like to put down others. But I have also seen those same kids get one step away from a full-out A-beating because some actually nice high school dude realized the sh wasn't okay. I had a less than happy middle school life, so I'm a bit jaded here, but the amount of abuse and bullying and pure sociopathic behavior is nuts. My outgoing mother announcing to everyone how shy I am. Got one better. My outgoing mother announcing to everyone that I must be cold as she dead stares at my chest. She did this during my teenage years, as a shy, anxiety-ridden teenage girl. Holy F. My mom asking me in a crowded car full of my classmates if I needed her help learning how to shower. I actually appreciated that. People would just say hi and keep it moving. When she didn't make the announcement, people would be so interested and, thinking I was as extroverted as her, pummel me with questions. Then I'd end up looking rude because I'd just stop talking, when in actuality I was focusing on breathing so I wouldn't panic cry. I recently started therapy. I was diagnosed with social anxiety and am actively working on it. You guys are so sweet. Mandatory speech class when I was a freshman in college. I'd do the thing, then go back to my dorm and throw up. Really freaked out my roommate, who I barely spoke to. 5 speeches that semester, it was a nightmare. I really effing hate public speaking with a passion. For my speaking exam in year 10 I was allowed to do it with just the teacher and a couple friends of my choice to be the audience. Then in year 11 we was told they lost our results, so we had to do it again. I cried in class but was too shy to tell anyone why. Had to do it in front of the whole class but was allowed to just stand at my desk. Didn't help much and I still hate it. I am a bit shy when first meeting people, so after getting to know me, I often hear when I first met you, I thought you were such a bee. Cool. I get told that I seem intimidating, which I always find bizarre. When you don't talk they don't know about you, what you like to do, where you're from, etc. So you become an unapproachable unknown. As a kid my shyness was crippling. I got locked in the toilet in school, started yelling crying, and the teacher had to remove the lock to get me out. The whole class was standing behind him, looking at me. Geez, I thought that stuff only happened in the movies. Hope you're doing well. Definitely not only a movie thing, haha. I experienced something similar, but some mean kids manipulated the lock when I was inside and that's why I got stuck. Super traumatic. I hated my childhood. In my high school Spanish class, some kid screamed, "Do you ever talk at me?" in front of the entire class. Super embarrassing at the time, but hilarious to look back on. Had a similar incident in freshman science class in high school. Hardly ever talked and I guess the teacher somehow got it in her head that I was mute. She came up to me early one morning just before class with a sign language interpreter and asked if I needed participating in class. Looked her dead in the eye and said I can't talk. She turned about 7 different shades of red before telling the interpreter they wouldn't be needed. Poor soul was just trying to help. Had a moment like this when I was a kid. I'm not shy, but if I have nothing to say to you, I won't. Anyway, when I was 11 I was awarded the title of quietest camper, and when I got up to get my STA award, everyone was chanting talk, 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 as if they didn't have the opportunity of the entire summer to take the time to hear what I had to say. Just curious, what did you talk about when you received it? When I was in HS, I killed my already dead grandpa a couple of times to avoid social events. I was in a group therapy session as a kid, like maybe 14. I really had to go to the bathroom but we weren't allowed to during the session. I was sorta balled up in the center of the room. Not like emotional or anything, just sitting comfortably hugging my knees cause all the spots on the couch were taken. Some girl had just finished telling a story of her abuse. She was crying and there was no other sound. Was sort of that awkward but respectful silence that fills the space when you wanna be supportive but saying anything at all would somehow seem inconsiderate. It was into this yawning void that I farted. I knew it was coming. I'd been staving off the gurgling in my stomach for some time now. I'd broken into a sweat already with the sheer effort of will to delay the inevitable. It was no use. I tried to discreetly shift my weight and maybe muffle the sound. I failed. This was neither silent nor deadly. It effortlessly shattered the silence like sledgehammer vs a Christmas ornament. Another moment of silence swallowed the sound, but it was a void of disbelief. Then some kid yelled as loud as they could. Jen farted, and the entire room collapsed into helpless laughter while I promptly turned to stone and died on the spot. Hopefully it gave the crying girl a giggle too. It actually did. It's pretty hard not to give in to the absurdity of the moment, you know, if you're not the one who farted anyways. Going to a crowded party with one friend who really wanted to drag you along but then disappears. Where my damn panic button. Frantic button mashing. Been there too many times. The worst. And there is no dog. And no one is texting you and your phone is dry AF. It should be mandatory to have a dog at every party as a safety net for introverts. Like having non-alcoholic drinks for the teetotalers. When you talk and people say things like, oh I didn't know you could talk, or this is the first time I hear you talking. In the same vein as this, when I was a shy kid instead of a shy adult, I'd spend quite a while in my bedroom in order to get personal space away from my family who are all chatterboxes. Almost every time I finally came out into the family room for a little bit of socializing, everyone would always make a huge deal of seeing me. I didn't even know you were here. Wow, she's socializing. She's out of her cave. And so many other things always said so derisively. Always made me just want to go back into my room to hide. This is exactly why when I see my new stepsister, 13, come out of her room, I tell her it's nice to see her and ask her what she wants to do. She always ends up thanking me for spending time with her, but I always thank her back because she's legitimately one of my closest friends. I was at a friend's house. His parents used to scare me. The dad had a thick Asian accent, and due to my nerves, I guess I wasn't paying attention. Didn't realize the dad was full on asking how I was, and I just stood there awkwardly. I thought he was speaking to his son in Cantonese. I still think about this. I never corrected my boss when she mixed up my name on the first day. I had already introduced myself to some people by my real name. The other half of people my boss introduced me to called me another. I felt too shy to correct her in front of the group. It just led to more awkward conversations, as the two names were completely different. I have a bar that I used to go to in the before times, where I would play darts with some friends. It's a small bar, so the one bartender learned most people's names. It was after a few weeks that I realized that he was calling me the wrong name. I thought the previous times he had been talking to someone else. It's been too long now, so I won't correct him. My shy buddy hated ordering coffee at the Starbucks in the Barnes & Noble bookstore. They cannot accept your order and take your money. They had about 6 questions they have to ask first. She couldn't stand it. Oh, I'd like a medium coffee. Them, do you want light roast or dark roast? We don't have medium. We have tall. Okay. Do you need space for cream? What's your name? Are you part of the bookstore club? Are you part of the Starbucks points? I'm not sure if I'm remembering it right, but I think at least once she panicked and walked away mid-interrogation. It's worst when English is not your first language. I was in California visiting my brother and we stopped at a Starbucks and he asked me to get him a coffee. The person taking the order asked me what I wanted and I told her. She didn't understand my accent. I tried a few times. Then my brother came back and she looked at him and asked if I speak English. I'm from England. Being told to lower your voice and shut up as a child. Then as a teen being told to speak up for myself more and answer when I am asked something. Then growing up never speaking unless spoken to, or in case of emergency. As a shy girl I only talked when my friends did. I also didn't go to my teacher when I accidentally smashed my thumb with a hammer for a class project. Since I was trying my best to be quiet and not disturb anyone, I realized no one noticed I smashed my thumb up. So after recovering from almost fainting at the sight of my blood oozing out, I walked up to the teacher so I wouldn't bother anyone else and asked her if she had a first aid kit. She said of course. Why? Did you hurt yourself? And I just showed her my thumb, dripping with broken skin and said, kinda. She was shocked I hadn't screamed or said anything for a good 10 minutes and immediately set off to get the first aid and help dress my injury. She knew I was quiet and shy, though I think it surprised her to realize to what extent. I figured I needed some help, and I absolutely had to ask, because my tiny first aid kit was only meant for paper cuts and small scrapes. Long story short, I was too shy to draw attention to my pain, and had to gather the courage and breath to ask for assistance. Are you me? I had a similar thing happen at basketball practice where I tripped going to get the ball, fractured my wrist, but was too shy to tell anyone, so I just kept playing. Then at the end of practice, the coach told me to work on my dribbling BC I was only using one hand. Starts college doesn't make friends lockdown Ed. I'm 3 years into out of state college with no friends there. Wrecks my mental state every time I go back. The worst part is when you finally gather the courage to try to talk to people about something you know they're interested in and they only give one-word answers back. I made the mistake of going to a commuter college so people literally only go to class and go home. Right when I started finding clubs and social things to go to, COVID hits, and don't even get me started on this freshman communities thing I just found out about but can't do. My by far worst experience was living together with a roommate. I wasn't able to talk to them and I thought they hate me. What happened after? I am also in similar situation. I'm still in it, so I would be glad if you have an answer. Haha. I went from being the anxiously shy kid to the anxiously talkative person that has no filter and people find annoying. The worse the social tension gets, the more I talk, the worse I make it. The more I talk. I had a roommate and I lived with for 2 months while I subletted a room. I used to talk to him for hours like every night after work. In my head, I justify thinking I was overthinking it, that he doesn't hate me. Why would he talk to me for so many hours? But then again, we never hung out outside the apartment. We're both busy. That's it. He's never called me back or talked to me since I moved out. Kinda hard to dismiss the he thought you were crazy and only appeased you because he thought you would murder him in his sleep explanation. Well anyway, it turns out I can avoid being psychotically talkative and later screaming into my pillow regretting it if I just avoid people. Graduating basic training and having to walk across the stage. Stop at the MIG. Execute a left face turn. State my name in the MIG with a short pause between first and last name as a cue for the next row of guys to walk up. I completely F'd it up in front of everyone. Went to shake my drill sergeant's hand as a formality of the ceremony and he whispered to me way to F that up in front of everyone. Dipsh, F off back to your seat. I effing hate public speaking. Someone took my order from the shelf at the online order station at Chipotle and I waited 45 minutes after the time it was supposed to be done before saying anything because I didn't want to be rude. Not the literal worst thing to happen to me, but it is what stopped me from going to Chipotle. I hate video calls. I was going to drive 1.5 hours to my college to talk to a professor in person instead of just video calling to follow up on something. I have a theory on this one because I feel the same way. In-person interactions usually allow for a deeper level of connection when it's someone you are already familiar with that can make us shy people less anxious. Something that you totally lose over a video call. I was having coffee with a friend one day. We had just been to the gym so I thought I was looking pretty disheveled, but maybe not because a guy came up to us and slid me a piece of paper with his number on it. He said he had seen me while driving by and thought I was beautiful and just had to stop and say hello. I was so caught off guard and just naturally awkward around strangers that the only thing I could blurt out was if you think I'm cute now you should see me when I've bathed. He walked away. My friend laughed. I was embarrassed for days. I'm not shy but I'm one of those only talk when necessary types. I tell new people that I'm not shy and I am a low energy person so I'm always this mellow. There is nothing wrong with not having the energy of a 10-year who drank 3 Red Bulls. People do seem to take thing I say more seriously than others. People are different in that. Worst experiences are probably the people that talk about you right next to you, assuming you don't have a backbone. I decided to be brave at a college picnic for students in the pharmacy program. All the tables were occupied, so I confidently went up to a table with a bunch of people and asked if I could join them and I immediately sat down. No one said a word to me. Not one word. I ate as fast as possible and went home and cried. F those a-holes. Wow. Reminds me of a time when I did about the same thing. It was a bus stop with about 3 or 4 girls just chatting. I decided that day I would be confident. Walked up and immediately asserted myself. You could hear the crickets chirping after that. Never did that again.